Picture a 7-year-old boarding a private jet for the 3rd time that month, complaining that the in-flight Wi-Fi is a little slow. He's not spoiled. He's not even aware he's rich. He genuinely believes this is just what a Tuesday looks like for everyone. 3,000 miles away, another 7-year-old is doing real arithmetic, counting his allowance to see if he can afford one video game by Friday. Only one of these two kids actually understands what money is, and it isn't the one on the jet. Welcome to Cash Verdict, where I run forensic audits on the financial fantasies you've been sold since birth. Today's subject is the most overhyped inheritance in human history, being a billionaire son. Everyone assumes this is the easiest job on earth. Get born, collect a trust fund, repeat. I ran the actual numbers. The return on investment is catastrophic. I'm Ledger, and unlike most of the finance content you watch, I don't get paid in feelings. I get paid in facts. So grab a coffee you can actually afford, because we're opening the books on what it really costs to be born on third base and spend the rest of your life being told you hit a home run.
Liability Category 1. The Infinite Heir Account. Every child builds a baseline for what counts as normal by comparing their house to the houses around them. The billionaire son has a uniquely broken baseline because everyone around him is also rich. His friends fly private. His neighbors fly private. Statistically, his pediatrician probably flies private too. When you're submerged entirely in money that deep, you stop registering it as wealth and start registering it as oxygen. It's just the atmosphere. I call this infinite air, a childhood so fully saturated in cash that the cash becomes invisible, the same way a fish never compliments the ocean. The illusion doesn't break on its own. It breaks on exposure. Usually around age 7, when a birthday party or a school trip drags him into an actual normal house for the first time. 2 stories, 1 garage, no second kitchen. And he stands in the doorway and asks, with complete sincerity, where the staff entrance is. Not as a joke. He genuinely cannot picture how laundry gets handled without a guest exit. The friend's parents laugh about it for years. He doesn't laugh. He spends the car ride home doing the first real piece of financial analysis of his life, silently comparing square footage, counting bathrooms, recalibrating an entire worldview in the backseat of a car that, statistically, is worth more than the house he just left. That question is the first impairment charge on his emotional balance sheet, the exact moment he learns the entire world does not operate the way his does. Infinite air evaporates in seconds, and underneath it is something every other 4-year-old already understands, and he's only just discovering at 7. Scarcity. The one concept that makes money mean anything in the first place.
Liability Category 2. The corporate childhood.
Most kids have a childhood. He has an org chart. A team inside the family office manages his schedule the way a hedge fund manages a portfolio. Diversified, optimized, reviewed quarterly. Mandarin tutors flown in from Beijing because the next 50 years of trade run through Asia, and someone decided that should start at age 6. A posture coach. An etiquette instructor who teaches him which fork survives a 4-course dinner and which one gets you quietly mocked by people who collect forks competitively. What he doesn't have is a playdate. He has what the family office calls structured peer engagement, which is a polite phrase for networking that begins before either participant can spell the word network.
Childhood is supposed to run inefficient. Wasted afternoons, bad decisions, boredom that eventually turns into imagination. His has none of that. It's been optimized for output since before he had teeth, and the magazine profiles never mention the part that actually matters. A life engineered for zero waste produces an adult with zero tolerance for failure, because failure was never a line item the model accounted for. You can optimize a child the way you optimize a supply chain. Children, last I checked, are not supply chains. They're supposed to break things, lose things, waste entire afternoons doing absolutely nothing of value. His childhood was structured so that nothing, including him, ever could.
Liability Category 3. Human capital. Marked down to junk bond status.
This is where the audit turns genuinely bleak. Every relationship in his life gets contaminated, retroactively, by one unavoidable question. Do they actually like him? Or do they like the 11 zeros attached to his last name? That's not paranoia. That's due diligence, and he runs it on everyone, because eventually, everyone gives him a reason to. Even the friendships that make it past the front gate, sometimes literally, security clearance and all, have already survived more vetting than most corporate acquisitions before anyone's allowed to call him by his first name.
The childhood friend who resurfaces at 23, not to catch up, but to pitch a restaurant concept that just needs $400,000 in seed capital. The romantic partner quietly shopping vacation photos to a tabloid the entire relationship because one picture of him on a yacht is worth more than most people make in a year.
Trust, for a normal person, compounds slowly, the way interest builds in a savings account, through years of small, reliable deposits. For him, trust starts in default. Every new relationship opens already marked down to junk bond status, high risk with the yield flowing to someone else, and he has to watch years of consistent behavior before he can even consider an upgrade. Most people get to be naive for a while.
That's actually healthy. It's how you learn what good faith connection feels like before you ever need to defend against the bad kind. He skips that stage entirely and goes straight into forensic relationship accounting, so that by the time he's old enough to actually want intimacy, he's already fluent in exit clauses and prenups. That's not cynicism. That's just what happens when your personal life has been actively targeted since middle school.
Liability Category 4, the dandruff dividend. Let's talk about the holiday wire transfer, because this is my favorite line item in the entire file. It's December. $15,000 lands in his account from a parent, enough to cover a year of rent in most American cities. From the outside, that reads as obscene generosity.
Let's run the actual math. If the parent's net worth sits around $150 billion, $15,000 represents roughly 0.00001% of total assets. Now, scale that down to something you can feel. For someone with a comfortable, financially stable net worth of $1.5 million, paid off house, solid retirement, nothing to complain about, the proportionately identical gesture would be handing them 15 cents. Not $15, 15 cents. That's the real weight of this generous gift once you adjust for scale.
In human terms, it's the financial equivalent of shaking out your hair, watching a single flake of dandruff drift to the floor, and saying, with total sincerity, Merry Christmas. I hope this changes your life. The check covers the rent. The check also confirms, with mathematical precision, exactly how replaceable he is inside the actual operating budget of the empire he's supposedly set to inherit one day. That's not a gift. That's a rounding error wearing a bow.
Liability Category 5, the succession time bomb. And finally, the liability that dwarfs every other line on this audit combined. He doesn't just inherit money. He inherits the obligation to never lose it. Publicly. Forever. The math here should terrify him more than any market crash, because the data is brutal and consistent. Roughly 90% of generational wealth is gone by the third generation.
Not because that generation is lazy, despite what every Finance Bro podcast wants you to believe. It's because wealth built once, through obsession and risk and a decade of missed birthdays, is structurally difficult to hand off intact to someone who inherited the reward without ever earning the instincts that built it.
So now he's not just managing a fortune, he's managing the statistical probability of becoming a cautionary case study. The name finance YouTube channels use as a warning to other rich kids in videos exactly like this one. Every decision he makes for the rest of his life gets measured against a ghost, the founder, the empire builder.
The parent who is never fully satisfied because satisfaction was never built into the model in the first place. That's the real inheritance. Not the houses, not the jet. The quiet, permanent audit running in the background of his entire life, where the only acceptable outcome is to not be remembered as the reason it all disappeared.
So here's the final verdict, filed and stamped. Being a billionaire son was never free money. It was a leveraged position in someone else's empire, financed by a mortgaged childhood, with every relationship discounted to junk status long before he understood what trust was even supposed to cost. The closing balance sheet reads, assets infinite.
Trust insolvent. You wanted to know what it actually costs to be born rich? Now you know the real exchange rate. Everything has a price. His was just paid before he was old enough to read the receipt.